You may not believe this, but I have more than half a century's experience of being a biological male. And I would say, 30 years or so of that could be counted as being a man, as being somewhat adult as a man. Mostly physically maturity before about the age of 35, I'll grant you, but the reality is I've had a good amount of time to be a fully grown male. There are a few things I want to get people to think about, given the fact that I've spent as much time as I have as a man. Hello, welcome to the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I am Kurt. Today is Wednesday, the 23rd of December of 2020, and I wanted to note that tomorrow is Thursday, the 24th of December of 2020. That will be Christmas Eve for those who are celebrants of Christmas, and I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas. I probably will do both a Christmas Eve and a Christmas Daily Summation. It just depends on how things go, but that's my plan at this point. I wanted to welcome everybody aboard who's coming aboard on Rumble, the podcast, and on YouTube. Thank you for coming aboard and paying attention to the various things that I'm saying. I know sometimes you might question why you do it if you're like me when you look at other people talking. Today's subject is a very simple one. The subject is men. And I wanted to talk about the idea that I wanted to, first of all, sort of juxtapose the idea of men against the idea of biological women. It's important to realize that women can bear children. And it's important to realize that one of the things that they're responsible for, if you will, is bearing children, and that often they end up being responsible for is caring for the children who are born, right? To some degree, to a large degree. Because they're the ones who can feed them as a natural process. Of course, there are other processes that aren't quite so natural, but that work to feed children. And in fact, I think all of my children were brought up on bottles and not of breast milk. So I recognize that that's true. But here's the thing. The result of this is that men who father children, who biologically father children, should, where at all humanly possible, step up and take the responsibility of having done that thing. Much of the time that tends to look like monetary support and things like upkeep of the home and making sure that there's a way for people to get around and making sure people get to work and making sure people wake up and get to school or get schooled, however that works out in your particular family. But here's the important thing. I don't care if you're married or if you're not. If you were the father, or are the father, more correctly, of a child, then you should step up and take responsibility if you helped to create that baby. Because you did. You helped to create that baby, and there's really no way around that. Here's another important thing. I don't think a lot of people realize, and I'm not going to get into the statistics. I know that there are a bunch of people who have already done that. I'm trying to think of his name. Very, very good. Larry Elder, conservative talker. I know that also people like Thomas Sowell, and I'm sure Walter E. Williams, when he was around to do so, and many, many others have pointed out statistically. I'm not going to take the time to do this, but I know that they've taken the time to point out statistically just how important parents are in a family, and particularly fathers. What ends up happening in a lot of African American, black, whatever you want to call them, that's pretty much up to you, however you want to deal with that. But what happens in a lot of those families is that there are a lot of kids who have a mother figure. And I'm not saying that the mother figure is perfect, but that's just life. Mother and father figures, neither one are necessarily perfect. But they have a mother figure, but they don't have a father figure in their life. And what that does is it means that they don't get that picture of what a father should look like. And this is particularly important when we talk about young men. It's enough for a lot of young men to see a mom who works and works and works and works and works and works and sacrifices and scrimps and saves and does all of the necessary things. And again, I can't applaud mothers nearly enough for the work that they do for their children. And that includes young men. But I think it's important to realize that one of the things that statistics have shown consistently is, particularly for young men, particularly for boys and young men, not having a father figure in the home is really, really something that places them at a disadvantage. It's not something advantageous to kids, to young men particularly, young ladies too, because you have to remember too that what happens with young ladies is they don't get that experience of having a reasonable, decent human being that's a male in the household, and it means that they don't know what that should look like a lot of times. So it affects young ladies too, but what it does to young men is maybe even more devastating. And that's bad because what it does to young ladies a lot of times is pretty darn horrible, really. Like I say, not really having that firm father figure in the house, somebody who actually is reasonable, responsible, proper, etc. Not having that in the house is bad enough for the young woman, but for the young man, it basically means that the only person they have to look up to is a mom. And it's not that the mom is doing a bad thing in that. It's great that she's there, right? It's wonderful that mothers take care of their children when fathers slough off and act stupid. But the point is that what men see is what other men do. And a mom can work to instill the proper behaviors in a young man, and maybe she'll even be successful. But let me just tell you a secret. One of the most important aspects of any kind of leadership is example. It's one of the most important aspects of leadership. So when you have a young man who does not have an example of what a father should look like, of what those who should be taking care of their children, loving their children, taking care of their children, being a daddy to their little boys and little girls, when they don't have that example not being there, they've got the example of the mom maybe, and that's great and everything, but they look at men and what they see is something that is less than exemplary, less than something that they should look up to. And they begin to think that the responsibility for all of that ought to fall on women, some of them, not all of them, not all young men come to that conclusion. Some of them do quite well, right? But some of them begin to think that women ought to be taking on that responsibility, and that's really nothing for the man at all. And they follow down the same path that their fathers did when their fathers left their moms. So I think it's important for us to understand that one of the things that has to happen is we have to start teaching young men to take responsibility for the children they bring into the world, and we have to start to convince them that the difficulty that they suffer as a result of doing that, the sacrifice that people make as a result of doing that, is worth it for multiple reasons. Look, from the perspective of selfishness alone, if you have kids who are living on the welfare system and you're a working person, you pay for that. If you can't make another excuse on God's green earth why the sacrifice to make that child into a better human being is a good one, make the selfish excuse and say, look, as I get older, I'm going to get paid more. I'm going to start doing jobs where people are going to treat me better and so forth, but I'm going to end up paying higher taxes because my children are not going to have gotten instilled in them the perspectives, the viewpoints, the examples of what a good man looks like, if nothing else. Now, I'll be honest, my first statement about that is if you don't love a woman, don't have sex with her. If you're not willing to stay with a woman and raise children with her, do not get into a physical, intimate relationship with her. Okay? All right. I wanted to take a second before I wrap up, because I'm coming up on that time, to do one thing that is very, very important. I wanted to congratulate. I wanted to applaud. I wanted to pat on the back. I wanted to give a big attaboy, whatever you want to say, to those men out there that are being good parents. If you're a good parent, thank you very much for what you're doing. Know that you're important. Continue to try and make yourself better. Try and make your children better. And thank you so much for what it is that you're doing. All right, I need to wrap things up. Again, today is Wednesday, the 23rd of December of 2020. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, the 24th of December of 2020, and Christmas Eve. I'm probably going to try and get a daily summation in tomorrow. We'll see how that works. I hope everything will work out well. Whether I see you or not, I hope you have a good Christmas Eve and a good Christmas. I know a lot of people are doing their quote Friday today. I hope you have a good quote weekend over the Christmas period as well. And hopefully we will see you again tomorrow. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Wednesday, the 23rd of December of 2020. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S. .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.